media is legacy media is falling apart, and as it crumbles, a void is opening, a void that we intend to fill. The big legacy news networks currently average just 1.2 million viewers a weeknight, and those numbers are only going to get lower. Legacy media is dying, and the younger generation has moved on. Legacy media panders. Legacy media lies. Legacy media does not know what the truth is, and they don't care about it. Legacy media is a dumpster fire. This is why we few in our wild imaginations have started the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Our goal is to take down the legacy media giant of the last 50 years with our 5 stones. We started in 2016 with our flagship show, Cross Politic. Since those small beginnings, we now air on DirecTV. Our broader podcast network now gets over 4 million downloads a year. And our Fight Laugh Feast pub, which includes TV shows like This America, The Rowdy Christian's Guide, Pastors in Politics, and As the Lord Pleases, with your support, many more to come. Our goal is to become the flagship new media 2.0 network over the next 50 years and take over nightly news, sports, sitcoms, hunting shows, and more, all conveniently stored for you in our Fight Laugh Feast pub. We're already reaching the next generation through our podcast shows on YouTube, X, and our pub, while also tapping into legacy media audiences by airing our shows on TV through DirecTV and Xfinity. We have made a lot of progress with some duct tape and a good bit of intuition and a lot of sweat. And now we need your support more than ever. The TV networks have had such a negative impact on our households, and we're trying, by the grace of God, to put a stop to that. We have the opportunity. We just need the army. Now more than ever, we need you to join our pub to help us reach our goal of 1 million pub supporters in the next 5 years. There's no way around it. Competing with Fox and the Alphabet networks without money is virtually impossible. It's cheap for you to join. And when you do, you're combining your small monthly support with a growing army of like-minded Christians. We have thousands, we need millions. So if you want more of the Alphabet network's misinformation and lies, don't join. But if you want to give us a mere 5 stones, then please join the pub, and together we will take a swing at the head of big media, all the while fighting, laughing, and feasting to the glory of God. Cross Politics, Pastor Toby Chuck Knox.
Oh, your voice sounds so weak. What happened to you?
Is my voice not?
Wow.
You were like talking into the air.
Good afternoon.
What?
What is that?
Because if you guys saw what happened at the Olympics, you really need to subscribe to our
You also go lift it up.
Party, yep. That's
We
my
have to do this
producer. I do this every time. I think the camera follows me wherever I go. That's
Yeah, you would.
We don't have that kind of budget, Gabe.
1776.
Party like it's 1776.
Because the French Revolution needs to know Reformation.
What?
That's what happened.
Yeah,
there you go.
Okay. All right. Well,
That's my magazine plug. Go to fightlaughfeast.com.
Can we get Gabe some coffee? I just want a little coffee for you. You just need a little coffee.
Did 2 hours of production.
Today's culture shifts like sand, but New St. Andrews College is established on Christ, the immovable rock. The college is a premier institution that forges evangelical leaders who don't fear or hate the world. Guided by God's word, equipped with the genius of classical liberal arts and God-honoring wisdom, with a faculty dedicated to academic rigor and to God's kingdom, New St. Andrews College offers an education that frees people. Logic and language, hard work and joyful courage, old books and godly professors. New St. Andrews College provides time-tested resources that can equip your student for any vocation. To find out more, visit nsa.edu. That's nsa.edu. Wait, one more thing.
Ooh.
You guys are aware that we have a new app, right? If not, you should download it right now. Head on over to your favorite app store and type in Cross Politic or Fight Laugh Feast or Pub TV. Once you find the app, you may need to update yours.
Type in like President Trump assassination attempt.
It won't work.
It'll
be like that.
What happened?
A little AI thing will come up and be like that.
Never happened.
Never happened. if you have a Droid phone, you may need to delete your current FLF app and re-download it.
Sorry, I was just I made so many jokes in my head about Android phones. It's hilarious.
I think
you should hear them.
That's why that line is still in the ad. Once downloaded, you'll be able to view or listen to our content right on your mobile device. And are we going live on our mobile device yet? Are we, on the app?
Are we not? I mean, we've done it once. We tested it.
But guys,
but pretty soon.
I'm still telling droid jokes in my head. You want to hear one? These are not the droids you're looking for. Sorry.
That's pretty funny. FightLaughFeast.com. That is FightLaughFeast.com. I guess we just tell people FightLaughFeast.com because you actually have to go to the mobile store to download the app.
Yeah.
Right? But FightLaughFeast.com.
There might be the place on the website that sends them there.
FightLaughFeast.com. FightLaughFeast.com. And subscribe to the magazine.
Yeah.
And join the pub. There, I hit it all.
So, Toby, did you watch the opener at the Olympics?
I watched a picture.
That's it?
Yeah.
Did you watch the opener?
I mean, I had TiVo, and so I just kind of skipped around a little bit. And, I mean, I saw the picture.
I guess I saw some
hopped around.
some moving pictures, but I was like, well, that's enough.
Y'all know this is what you do, right? Like, this is what you do. This is, well, not what you do. You're a pastor.
I saw what I needed to see.
For you, there's no excuse.
I saw what I needed to see. But there's a bunch of videos that are scrolling on my Twitter too. But I didn't watch the whole thing.
Context, people.
We
don't just context.
I mean, I saw
some
that.
Things.
I saw the large woman. I saw the blue dude.
How do you know how she identifies? First of all,
I saw Blue Smurf.
How do you know how it identifies?
Well, because she's looks like a woman.
Got it.
That's what I mean.
Well, there was a lot of things that tried to look like a woman on that particular.
That's it.
Just saying.
Oh my god! No, there are some things that you don't need much context for.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I think you're right.
And there are some things that just come in a context. Like you don't have to even know the context to know the context.
I didn't read 50 Shades of Grey to criticize it.
Well, this show's over. That's why you're not excited. You really don't care about what happened.
Actually, the thing that I'm most excited about is the title of this show.
16. Hold on. Wait. I have music. 16 of the top 10 takeaways from the Olympics.
I'm trying to figure out, is that a lot or is that a little?
I'm just so excited because I just don't want to know if it's a 16 or is it 10.
Well,
16 or is it 10?
16 of the top 10.
Yeah.
So
right.
It's probably going to be more interesting to figure out how we get 16 out of 10 than the whole opening ceremony itself. But
it just feels like we're playing with like XX and XY. That's all.
I don't know what you're talking about.
16 of the top 10.
Yeah. And look, if this ceremony and this opening can make sense, 16 of the top 10 clearly fits inside of this.
It doesn't make sense.
Category. So I feel that you can watch just about everywhere I went on social media. All the criticism, as soon as it happened, it was up pretty quick.
Yeah.
I saw people throwing fits all over the place on X. Few complaining on Facebook and what was it, Instagram? I saw a few things on there, but X, it was like on fire.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I missed it. Like, what's going on? So I didn't get a chance to go back because I recorded everything. I didn't get a chance to go back and watch the whole thing until like later. That night or something like that later. And so I was like, I need to watch the full context of this. And so y'all pray for Mrs. Shannon. She has to
bear with your
she didn't need to watch it.
Production.
She's like, in my bedroom?
Your production research.
You brought this in my bedroom?
I mean, Max said it was NC-17 rated.
No, for real.
I think you can find everybody having comments around this.
Yeah.
Just kind of oh, this is bad, this is horrible. But I was like, okay, what are the takeaways that we need to have around this? And I came up with 16 of the top 10
Where's that music?
takeaways. So we could talk about this. Number one. This is
number one.
And this is internally. There's some criticism I have towards Christians on this topic. Okay. But I want to make number one.
All right.
Religion is in everything.
Yeah.
I mean everything. Here we are at the Olympics.
Yeah.
And we are supposed to be having physical competitions to see who's more physically fit to throw a spear or run around a circle or play basketball or swim.
Have you seen those horses do that crip walk?
Yes, that was last time. But all of a sudden you turn it on, and even at the very end, there's this whole ceremony about peace, all togetherness. and then symbols like this
Right.
everywhere. And it was like, oh, we can't escape religion.
Right.
There's going to be some sort of religious ceremony around peace. You can't get around that.
Yeah.
There's going to be a God of peace. There's going to be a way that we got there. Did we follow the religious process for peace? Everything. And the Lord's Supper that they mocked in this was clearly around like, oh, this is our meal of peace.
Yeah.
And look who's leading it.
Right. Right. Yeah. We can define reality as we want.
Yep.
And we can make peace in our way. And it's going to be with transsexual drag queen, celebrating obesity. Apparently, we're going to do it our way.
And part of the criticism here for me around a lot of the Christians, especially those that have kind of said, okay, we're just going to be only church focused and basically nothing else. You don't get out of this unscathed. Like if your Christianity isn't going to go all the way to how you do Olympics, how you do world, how you communicate to the world, then you can't give that up.
Yeah.
And it owns the center. And if you vacate that premises, guess what? Somebody else is going to fill it in with something else.
Right.
Art, particularly art, right?
I added my own note to this.
You wrote 10 on you.
I was just thinking about this. I mean, another way to think about this is everything is theological.
Yes.
Everything's religious. Everything is theological. Everything is talking about God and his world in some reality, in some way. Even if an atheist says, I don't believe in God. Okay, fine. That's your theology. Your atheology. You're saying, I'm going to live in this world and pretend that there is no God. Now, of course, in many respects, you're going to live inconsistently. You're not going to actually live like there's no God. But that's how you're trying to orient your life.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for art, science, finances and economics, politics. Everything is theological because everything is saying this is the way to see things accurately. This is the way that the world actually works. This is the way to world peace. This is beauty. This is human sexuality. Whatever. It's a theological point.
So number 2, because we'll spend all day going. I'm gonna try to go through these as fast as I can.
I'm
following. That's pretty good, Pastor. You didn't do so bad on that. That's not bad at all. I appreciate that. Number two, how is history? And I think this is the question that they're answering ultimately. How is history going to move forward?
Right.
Right.
Who's they?
I think
that's the question.
The secularists, there's particularly ones who are leading this. And I think it's interesting. I think France is answering that. I think the Olympics, who knew what they were doing.
Or at least hired the guy who came up with it.
The globalist idea, right? I think there's no question that this is globalism at its main core, right? This is the idea of what does it look like for us as a people group, all of us. Remember, that's what the whole point was. That's what the author said was. This is us having freedom together. This is us together. This is inclusion.
Right.
Well, what does that freedom look like? How does the world move forward? How do we advance? And it's really telling that all of the advancement that they have for how we move forward is really based around sexuality. I mean, the whole thing was permeated with sexual references
and decapitated heads.
And decapitated heads, exactly.
And Smurfs.
We got George and
Smurfs.
And Smurfs. I mean, gay Smurfs. We got George Grant coming on tomorrow to talk about the French Revolution and the Olympics. And I got a lot of questions on that.
Yeah, this goes back. This goes back a little ways. The other way of saying this is their gospel of multiculturalism.
Yes.
And the gospel of multiculturalism essentially is this idea that the original sin, the reason why we don't get along in this world is because we are different. And so what you have to do is you've got to bring people close together, and then they will realize they're not so different. And then we'll all get along and utopia will break out. So this is a false gospel because, of course, the problem is human sin, not our differences per se. It's sin. And we need Christ in order to reconcile those differences. But it's not an accident. Back to your point, it's not an accident. This is at a depiction, a mockumentary depiction of the Last Supper, which is a picture of communion, a place where Christ is actually reconciling all things through His body and His blood. But this is a false gospel.
Well, and Satan offers like Turkish delight. He offers things that look good, might taste good initially, but in the end is bitter wormwood.
That's right. and destroys you.
And destroys you,
kills
takes
you.
you down.
Yeah.
And that's the lie that we've been believing here in America, and the lie they've been believing in France for
that's right.
How many centuries now?
Right.
One of the takeaways, number 3 of the 16 takeaways of the top 10. Yeah, that too. Yeah, 16 of the top 10 takeaways. Number 3. Thank you. I knew you were. I knew you. That's why I hit it.
Gonna be good.
But number 3 is someone is always going to lose their head.
Yes.
Someone, and what I mean by that, and I think another way to say it is, there's always going to be sanctions. Someone's not invited.
Yeah.
There's always going to be, and I don't think we need to forget our story has that in it too as Christians.
Right.
But the ones who lose their heads are these guys.
Right. No. And exactly. No,
like, we got to get this right. You don't escape this reality.
So they're talking all happy, like this is just all pretty and
glorious,
and it's this sort of hippie paradise.
Yeah.
We're all just gonna like have sex. It's just gonna be a big orgy, and everybody's gonna be happy. And
love wins.
And then some of the some people in the adults in the room. What about that little girl? And they're like, don't look too close.
Yeah.
So there's a little kid at the table along with these drag queens,
right?
Grooming her apparently.
Yeah.
But that's their sort of somebody's called it the homo globalism.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of this like, we're going to create world peace by this sort of orgy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it's absolutely at the foot of it is a pile of corpses.
Yeah,
that's right.
And
of decapitated corpses, and the modern one is a pile of babies.
That's right.
Like right now, who's being decapitated in order to make room for that world peace?
Yeah.
Babies.
That's what I was going to say.
Are being decapitated.
Sex outside of God's will is violence, leads to violence.
Yes.
That's what it is.
It doesn't end there either.
Yeah.
It doesn't end there.
Not
When
with
you
the
challenge that sexual morality that's outside of God's will, you get, John the Baptist got his head cut off.
But yes, exactly. We've got adultery that's breaking up marriage. That's violence.
Mm-hmm.
Covers everybody involved in violence. Malachi 2 says.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the violence of fatherlessness. Children out of wedlock, crime, incarceration, addiction rates, deaths of despair. I mean, that's all pouring out of this. I had people in my comments as I was talking about this claiming that people who are promiscuous are more aware of safe sex, and so it's actually monogamists who are more in danger of STDs and the bad effects of sexual
16 at the top 10.
Having sex with one woman.
It was like
marriage, one woman, one man for life.
I mean, to be fair, anonymous people with 3 followers, but like people were in my comments saying things like that.
That's
like
funny.
actually, as they say, it's monogamous people who are more in danger of
because they're ignorant.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. It's interesting. You mentioned John the Baptist.
Yeah.
So you speak out against sexual debauchery.
That's right.
You lose your head.
That's right.
Saint Dennis is one of the founding saints.
Evangelists.
He was one of the first evangelists to France, and he was decapitated.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of that in the history of France. But I think you're absolutely right.
Sex outside of God's will, immoral sex that has a different morality than God's word, leads to death.
Yeah.
And violence then death.
Right. And someone's always, there's sanctions for somebody.
Yeah, that's right. You can't escape that.
Either we're going to honor God's law and you're going to draw a line at sexual immorality and say, you must stop. Like, that is destructive and that destroys our land.
Yeah.
Or they're going to chop off the heads of the missionaries and the evangelists and eventually Christians.
Right.
That's right.
I wonder what David French thinks about the opening Olympic ceremony.
Give us some time. He'll be writing something about it.
Sure, it'd be great.
Number 4.
Quattro.
There is a deep push to have and I think this is inside the globalist idea too, revolution over reformation.
Oh, yeah.
Revolution is better than reformation. Long time being faithful, covenant faithfulness to God over time breeds success, and covenant unfaithfulness over time breeds failure. They don't want long-term anything. Don't forget about that. Don't give your time and energy to finding a place, giving yourself for 40 years and letting God work through that faithfulness to build something. No. Go and grasp for it in the garden. Take it right now.
Just because they don't believe in God. They don't believe in God, and they don't believe in the goodness of God.
Right. But that should make if you look at their revolution, it wasn't long before everybody got their heads cut off.
I know. Yeah. Robespierre's leading it, and then he's got his head chopped off because, hey, man, he's a boomer now.
Right. Yeah. Like, that's just so revolution. We have to make sure that there's nothing wrong with wielding power. There's nothing wrong with having power. How you get that
in a godly way
really does matter because that's long-term success, right? That's long-term faithfulness. And so what they're saying is you don't have to have any of that. And you got to remember, people who aren't having kids, people don't have a connection to history, don't believe in long-term faithfulness. Right. These people cut off their history. We don't want to be attached to Christianity. Slot, right? 0,0,0,0
American public
day
schools.
one. That's what they did with their calendar. They didn't want to honor God in that way.
They tried to go to a 10-day work a week. During the French Revolution.
I can't believe they even convinced people to consider
it. They actually enthroned the goddess of wisdom in one of the cathedrals. Like they rejected, during the French Revolution, they said, we are officially a secular nation and we worship the goddess of reason.
I'm gonna try this again.
And America can't learn from that history. Yeah, it's crazy. That's just a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah.
Number 5 on 16 of the top 10 takeaways. Oh, I did it.
All right.
From the opening ceremony is the story of 2 tables. This is really interesting.
2 tables.
Yeah.
Like feasting tables.
Feasting tables.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I don't think Christians get this enough. This is where Christians decide to put up most of their fight, which was really annoying to me. Okay, I got to say this before I finish on 2 tables. What was really annoying about this was that I'm doing the Trump thing. Christians got upset about the table setup,
the Last
Supper setup
being mocked,
but didn't get upset about the whole thing, right? And this really interested me because I think that in the picture of the Last Supper, you have blasphemy there, and so we're mad that they're blaspheming our blasphemy. And it was like, wait a second, we've instructed them on how to blaspheme. I mean, we have false pictures of white Jesus all over our churches. And it's like, come on, guys, how about this is our places of worship. We might disagree on how we apply the second commandment, because I do think that's a second commandment violation. Right. But at least in the church, we should say, how about no second commandment violations?
It's not bowed down to any picture.
How about we don't do that?
Yeah.
But we're upset about the picture that we use that's blaspheming, and that they're blaspheming that, which is like, okay.
Well, and then you also had, a lot of people were most upset about, so that's a good point.
Yeah.
But they were also most upset about just blaspheming the Last Supper.
And I think validly so.
But not as upset about just the fact that God was being blasphemed by all the drag queens.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So quite apart from whether there was this initial backlash, of course, that no, this was just a feast of Dionysus, and anybody with 2 eyes on it is like, no.
Well, on the actual live version, they said the Supper of our Lord.
Yeah, right. And they had to scrub the
video,
all this stuff, but it was up there, and it really was the Last Supper. Yeah. And anyone with 2 eyes in their heads could see that it was the Last Supper. But even if it was, let's say it was a feast of Dionysus,
sure,
like you still have dudes in dresses.
Yeah.
Mocking and blaspheming the image of God in man.
That's right. Hands down.
That's blasphemy too. Yeah. And then on top of that, they got a little girl out there.
Yeah.
Right. And now they're not protecting this child.
Yeah.
They're grooming this child on live TV.
Yeah. Well, there's a little angle there to me on that one where it also kind of makes the same point that you're trying to point out, is a lot of people made a big deal about the little girl, and I think rightly so. But so if the little girl wasn't there, would it be okay?
Right. Let's pass this point.
A little bit like
it's just like, but it's layer upon layer upon layer, like blasphemy.
Yeah. And if it wasn't, let's say that they really did try and do the Dionysus thing, like you said, which I'll go for that. All of this is blasphemy.
It's still blasphemy,
right? But it was blasphemy way before they got here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and they're in the corners of their own room.
We had blasphemy. Okay, so the 2 tables. We don't understand how important the Lord's Supper really is every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
What happens there, the meeting of God with us right there, God is meeting with us and in service, and all of the saints of old and the heavenly hosts are coming down and they're meeting with us, and we're having a meal with our Lord in that moment.
Yeah.
And what we are declaring is that the world is built in a particular way, and that world functions when we all submit to Christ. And then everything works out well.
Yeah.
When you eat from that other table, that other feast, you're the thing on the table.
Yeah.
You're the thing being eaten.
That's good.
you're the one who is going to have to pay for that.
Devoured.
You're the bacon.
You'll be devoured.
You'll be devoured.
Yeah. Well, this is just kind of a presuppositional also.
False gods are cruel.
A presuppositional point, but Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, you can't eat at the Lord's table and Satan's table.
Yeah,
there's two tables.
The table of demons.
There's always two tables.
Yeah,
and it's either God's table or Satan's table. And it's not which table. It's it's not that you're going to have a table.
Which table?
It's which table you're going to eat at.
Right. Everybody's eating on a table.
Yeah,
it's either God's table, it's under God's blessing, or it's a table of demons.
Number 6, globalism has a God. We fight against. A lot of people get globalism. They understand that globalism is a problem. The idea of all the nations losing their borders, but they don't understand that this is a religion.
Yeah.
These people, there's a God behind this. There are, I like to use the term theos, transcendent, hierarchy, ethics, oaths, and then succession. They have all of those. That's a covenant reality. When you make a covenant, there's a hierarchy, right? There's a transcendent, there's a hierarchy, there's ethics to that covenant, there's oaths to that, and then there's a succession. Globalism has all of those pieces.
Right.
And one of the things that we need to remember in this is that God does not have you sitting at the table with them. I just wanted to make sure those two things were connected: the table and then the globalism of God. God.
And that false God is eating you.
And exactly,
you're being destroyed. You're being eaten. I mean, remember, all idols are deaf, blind.
Yeah.
Deaf. Already said deaf. They're still deaf. They're also deaf.
You're just really trying to make me feel bad. Is that
really deaf. They're also powerless.
Yeah.
Whatever. They can't act. They can't speak. They can't see. All these things. And it says in Psalm 115 that those who make them and serve them become like them.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and move through these pretty quickly, because I think that connects perfectly. Which is number 7 is witchcraft. This is witchcraft.
Oh man.
And this connects right to globalism. You don't get the blessings of God apart from the means of God.
Right.
And when you try to do that,
right.
And here's what the whole Olympics is trying to do. They're trying to get that revelation, every tribe, every tongue, every nation without Christ.
That's right.
You don't get it.
Right.
You don't get it. You get violence instead.
Yeah, witchcraft is trying to trick the blessings of God out of creation without God.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. That's what you're trying. That's what you're trying to do.
So how's this witchcraft then?
They're trying to trick world peace and harmony.
Exactly.
And joy and happiness and
you can't have
unity,
peace.
Which, to be clear, the Olympics has been doing for
a long time.
Many decades.
But they're just showing their hands. Listen, you can't have peace without the Prince of Peace. Dot the end.
Yeah, right.
You don't have Christ. You don't have the Prince of Peace.
Right.
You don't get peace.
Right. Because their artistic argument was we need unity. This is the World Olympics. That kind of thing.
I mean, like, God has tells the best stories, and people are pointing this out, and I think it's worth pointing out that there's a picture up on the screen right now. But you have this abomination. Saying
on Thursday
we can make world peace without Jesus Christ, who was crucified and raised from the dead. And the next day, God knocks all their electricity out,
except for the church.
Except for you can't even keep the lights on. All right.
Takeaway number 8, which I think this one is really important. It didn't take much to get them to say sorry.
I know.
Yeah, whoever produced that opening charade.
Okay, now
it was a really lame.
Look, it wasn't even an apology, really. But
sorry if I offended you.
We're not as dead as we think we are, and we're not as dead as they think we are.
That's right. Yeah.
And we hardly breathed life, and they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry. We weren't trying to. We didn't want to." It's funny. We didn't do much at all. We just did a little complaint on social media. A couple people pulled out. And that little setup, that little pushback made them say, "Oh, we weren't trying to exclude you." And here's what was really big. They went and edited. By the time I came to see it 4 hours later, after it had taken place,
they took it off.
They had already edited out the Dionysus part and the Lord's Supper part. They had one of the shots and they cut all that scene out of there. And then they're already retracting some of their thoughts and what they said. And this wasn't this, it wasn't. And it was interesting. I'm like, Christians point a little bit at this area. And they got some movement.
Yeah, it was really encouraging, actually.
That's
really encouraging.
Imagine half we would have actually had some guts to say this whole thing's abomination.
I mean, and just imagine if Christians in America did that about abortion.
Exactly.
Just imagine if Christians in America did that about homosexuality, homo mirage, drag queens in libraries and publics. I mean, if all this, if Christians just said, That is offensive. We are Christians, and I mean, every drag queen is a complete insult to our wives and our daughters.
Yeah, and to the image of God.
And to the image. It's absolutely just a screaming insult.
Yeah,
a middle finger. And Christians need to just keep saying, every time you do that, you are offending us. We will not go along with this, and we need to be standing up. We need to be making this clear.
Number 9 of the 16 top 10 takeaways from the Olympics is you can't just guard the gooey center of the gospel.
All right, what do you mean by that?
This is interesting to me. You know, when remember at the RNC where they had the Hindu prayer, and you had Christians come out and say, how dare you, shame on you. They had all this vigor against this Hindu prayer, and yet these same Christians would be opposed to the first table of the law being applied in the civil realm.
Right.
And Christians will tell you, hey, your post-millennial idea, the victory of the gospel expanding and working its way out through the loaf, that's not for here. That's not now. Don't worry about that. Just focus on the church. It's all about the church and what happens there. Don't worry about the culture. And anytime the gooey center, and I think the cry for the Lord's Supper here is a gooey center part of this. And they went in and said, oh, you can't touch that. But they said it was okay to touch marriage.
Yeah.
They said it was okay to touch art.
Yeah.
They said it was okay to touch the public realm of blasphemy. They said we've let the culture come in so much, or should I say, we've let secularism come in so much into society. The only place that we said is off limits to them is the gospel.
Right.
But the gospel says completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
All authority in heaven and on earth has been, where? Heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go make disciples, baptizing and teaching them everything that I've commanded you. There isn't one area on planet Earth where this kind of thing has any authority to be taught.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that we can't just guard the gooey side. No, the reason you can't steal at Walmart even is because God said stealing is wrong everywhere.
Right.
It applies everywhere. And we don't have a kind of gospel where our theology, our civics, our laws apply everywhere.
And this is where, like,
no false gods.
They together for the gospel and the gospel coalition, with some of their whatever good intention might have been there, ended up actually doing a lot more damage to the church because they end up limiting the gospel.
It's on the gooey center.
Yeah, they end up limiting. You actually end up limiting the gospel when you define it that way.
That's right. We have to go after art too.
Yeah, go.
Number 10. Okay, boy, we can stay around here forever. Number 10. We got to get our art game up.
Our art game.
We got to get our art game.
Christians got to get our art
We
game
have
up.
to. And our forefathers, I think we're breaking the 5th commandment if we're not following the model of our forefathers and keeping our art game up.
Yeah.
Because part of the things that, and Pastor was arguing with me over the time frame, because I think I marked it 600 years. You're like, no, bro, like Christian art, that civilization and influx of it is way before that. So I'll grant that.
They started building those churches in the early Middle Ages.
I'll take all of that.
I mean, the big ones come later.
Take from them everything, give them nothing.
But they had to practice for a few hundred years.
Yeah.
This goes back to your point about not being willing to build something over time.
Yes.
I mean,
that's so convicting.
I mean, that people built the cathedrals over generations. They built buildings, poured their lives out for things that they would never worship in themselves.
Incredible.
But that was for them. It was a work of art for God.
Yeah.
And they knew that they wanted a building. They wanted a place where they would gather that symbolized and pictured what they believed God was worthy of. Which you can't build a building worthy of, and of course, ultimately, none of our buildings are worthy of Christ. But they wanted to at least intimate that with the beauty and the glory of these gigantic cathedrals.
Yeah. And for their generations to come.
Exactly.
For generations to come. I was just thinking about what am I building now that, so if you look back, you say building buildings for a long time. So imagine being in an era where you're like, that's my great grandfather's stone down there.
Yeah.
And here's my stone. And you're seeing that every day you come into work with this. And so your kids, and you're going to say, my great grandkids, that's going to be where their stones are going to be at.
Yeah.
And so you have generations locked into reality that you have to look at and say, ooh, I have to deal with that.
Right.
I had that. That just not something I can sweep over.
Yeah.
That's anti-Gnostic.
Right.
Right.
And it's fully reformational.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we have bought into a heavily pragmatic and utilitarian worldview that says whatever works right now and works the fastest and the biggest and the best right now, then that's what we have to do, which is really just a step away from the revolutionary stuff we were talking a minute ago. Because you're like, well, why not just shoot them?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
why not just burn it down? And, Christian morality holds us back from that, but you're still sort of in this utilitarian, pragmatic, like whatever works, a mindset rather than no, God intends to fill the world with his image bearers.
Yep.
Which takes time. And if we're making people who love and serve their creator and their savior, then that tells you if that's at the center of it, people being saved and sanctified. And God, again, in his mercy and his grace says, you know what I want to have you do? I'm going to have you live, 70, 80, 90 years. Then I'll bring you to heaven. And you're like, God,
yeah, I feel that.
Really?
I feel that.
Really?
I feel that.
And God says, yeah. And then I'm going to take, what I'm doing with you, I'm actually doing with all of human history.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a few thousand years, 20,000 years, 50,000 years. That's what I'm going to do with all of the whole world. I'm going to slowly make it more and more like Christ.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to make it all new.
Yeah.
And wipe away death.
So one of the things I think you can ask yourself, if you're a dad listening to the show or a father listening to the show, one of the things you can ask yourself is, how are you thinking covenantally? Are you thinking biblically? The question that just popped up in my mind as you guys were discussing was, one of my heart's desires should be that I want to start, let's say, a proverbial or start building a cathedral that my great grandkids finish. I want to be the kind of dad who's thinking long term
in terms of business,
everything,
in terms of inheritance, in terms of education, in terms
are you
of
wanting
worship?
To start building a cathedral that you great kids
and
here's why.
And do you think of God like that?
Yeah. And you have if you don't, because here's why. That argument of building and art is the thing that they're having to wrestle with, even though it's not in the society.
Right.
That's what they're trying to desecrate.
Yeah, right.
It still speaks.
They're burning them down.
Right.
I mean, literally in certain places, the Muslims are burning them down.
Like, look at Notre Dame.
I know. Exactly.
Right. So number 11, this is really important. I was asking the question, where was Islam?
Yeah.
And I know you were thinking, like, why would that be a question? But it's a question because I thought Islam took over France. Right? Like they're there.
Well, and notice none of the art is pointed at.
No, none of the art's pointed at it, but Islam itself is quiet.
Yeah.
They just allowed a whole bunch of himshis running through the streets. No, nothing.
Because it's mocking Christianity. It's helping destroy their biggest enemy.
But even that much mocking of Christianity, they could be like, okay, listen, now that's too gay. I mean, Andy Stanley had to come out and say something about it, so you know it was gay.
Tweet, and then he deleted that tweet.
No, it was still available.
It was still available.
No, it's still available.
I think.
Is it?
Yeah. I think the Muslims know though that if global homo wins, then they win.
I mean, I think Islam is using the global homo stuff.
So you think
they don't care if it dies or not? They just wanted to do some destruction on their behalf.
Yeah. Because they like, I mean, we've talked about this with like our United States military. Like who's afraid of the United States military if it actually is a bunch of trannies?
So you think that the Islam is just waiting, allowing all the desecration to happen?
So then afterwards, then they'll push them all off all the buildings.
Well, then we should even be more concerned about where Islam is.
Because the only time Muslims get mad is when a French cartoonist does something making fun of their God.
Exactly. Exactly.
Number 12 was just a thought that popped in my head is that if any of this opening looks attractive to our children, then we've failed. We should be, as soon as I saw this, the first thing that popped in my head watching it, when I saw the social media side of it anyway, was I'm going to go home and I'm going to kiss my wife a little longer so that my kids are a little grossed out by it just a bit more. And I wanted my wife to know that she's the most beautiful woman that I have ever seen in my life, right? I want her to know that I appreciate her. And I want my sons to know I'm grateful for them. And I want you guys to be strong men that protect you. I want my daughters to know that they're beautiful. And it made me say, I want them to love beauty so much that this right here is disgusting to them.
Yeah, you should, I mean, it's worth a, sort of a double check. Like, show your kids.
Yeah.
Show your kids a snapshot of this. And what do they say?
Yeah.
They just say, oh, that's interesting. Or, if they're not disgusted by it.
Yeah.
I mean, you really got your work cut out for you.
I'm going to try and run through these real quick because I know you got to run, Pastor. But I'm going to run these real quick. Number 12, you can't get to the Olympics, right? You can't directly get on there and try and control this output of what they do and change the station. You can't do that tomorrow. But the question I had was, what can I do right now? What is it that I actually can touch? What can I actually change? What do I have the authority over right now to be able to impact my sphere that I have sovereignty over? Yeah. That is really important. Number 13, education.
That's 3. That's 14, 15, 16. No.
Yeah. It could have been all 16.
Education.
Yeah. We have when you have a biblical education and you understand this, you can understand what the art is doing. So many people retracted when they said, oh, it's just Dionysius, it's not the Lord's Supper. Like, oh, well, in that case. Yeah. All right, okay.
No, but that's what you have up there, though, is the result of education.
Right.
So that's a report card.
Right. Yeah. That was the other side I was going. Somebody's going to educate you. Yeah. Who's going to do it? Okay. Yeah. There's so much to say on that. But
I think it's important to emphasize, though, that what Toby said, that's the report card.
I said education.
Of our education, of Paris's education system of, and our report card is not much better here in the U.S.
And the globalists know that.
Yeah.
They know what's going on with education. This one I think is super important. Being offended isn't building.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand that because part of the way the world thinks is that if I'm offended and I cause enough of a hoot about it, then I've gained power over the situation. And so they use false offense as a way of power.
Right.
That's not how the world works.
Right.
That's not how the world works. So we are the kind of people that are like, you know what? We need to send missionaries. We need to go and lay down our lives so that these people can hear the gospel, so that God transforms these broken people, so that we have a world that loves Jesus, right? We actually put this into action. If you're at home, this goes back to the last one. If you touch dough, make some great cookies, make some great bread, take it to your pastors and elders, tell them thank you for what they're doing. Like, if you're offended, take that and say, okay, how do I bless the ones around me?
One thing to throw out there is that we really have to work on the difference between, there is such a thing as godly indignation.
Yes.
Which we need to cultivate, and we don't want to be whiners or panickers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there really is, and there's
complainers.
There's a grievance industry.
Yeah.
There's a grievance economy that everything is paid for by, and that's intersectionalism. That's the DEI thing. That's the woke thing. It's like, who's got the biggest grievances? And that's why it's some of the concerns I have with some of the, now the white people are all the biggest oppressed classes. Like, well, I don't really want to play in that economy by who has the biggest grievance.
Yeah.
No. It's absolutely fine to point out facts where, like, those people are being discriminated against, those people are not getting justice done, and so forth. But we don't ultimately want to play in that grievance industry. And at the same time, it's certainly fine to cultivate godly indignation about injustice and evil in the world, but then go do something about it. And that's Knox's point. I was thinking of the example today as I was thinking about this, was because I think some people are just like, stop complaining. Stop complaining. And I think there were some people complaining, but I also think there were some people that were just being godly in their indignation.
And repent.
And like, this is wrong, and let's make sure this never happens again.
That's right.
You can do that in a manly and a godly and a Christian way. David was indignant at the taunting of Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
Goliath is taunting the armies of the living God, and David's like, so what are we going to do, you guys?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? And everybody's like, quiet,
let's go.
Quiet. Shh, he might hear you. And David's like, but he's taunting our God. Who's going to do something about this? And finally, word got out, and Saul got word. There's somebody who sounds brave.
Quick, get him in here.
Do we have a brave man in our camp?
But that's, again, so don't be a fusser, a whiner, a complainer.
Yeah.
That's right.
But you should cultivate godly indignation that drives you to godly action.
I tell my wife the big check on that, whether you have a complaint and a legitimate complaint, or, whether you use the word here, offended, Knox, is, if you have a complaint, don't talk to me first. Talk to God first. Then we can talk about it. But that's a good way to check.
Yeah.
The kind of,
and let God help you filter out what's the flesh.
Yeah.
And then what's the Holy Spirit.
I think part of the other thing I'm saying too is that if you're not building something, then all you'll do really is complain. because you don't have any place to put that energy.
Sure. Yeah.
So this last weekend, they had music camp. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. 460 kids.
Yeah.
So as the whole thing is going on, I'm going to music
That's
camp.
true.
And I'm watching my kids learn how to do war and singing harmony parts and singing the words of God. And I'm watching this place with 1,500 people packed. I couldn't find parking anywhere.
Celebrating their kids learning to worship the King of the universe.
And I said to myself, and I was when I got there, I was like, man, I can't find any parking. And it hit me in this context, like, I need to pray that next year I have to park doubly far.
Even further
it's
away.
Like, I can't find any parking.
And if
That's
you don't,
awesome.
and if we don't have that happening in our more local context, then we're not going to advance very. Okay, real quick. 15. Yeah, I know you got to run. 15. Civil duty. The civil responsibility and duty of a magistrate to guard against this stuff is super important. We better be thinking hard and deep about what interposition looks like.
This is something that goes back to, the reformers, the Christians, down to the founding of our country. They would have been asking, where are the police?
Yes. That's right.
We think that sounds crazy now, but they would have been saying that, and they would have been saying that about our country decades ago.
Just imagine like our mayor or our governor saying, no, you're blaspheming my God and the God of America.
Well, notice, of
just
course,
a bully pulpit.
Notice, of course, they're doing that with the people that have defaced rainbow flags and stuff like that.
But this is a failure on every level of authority, not just civil, but particularly FCC, all that stuff. We have to be thinking like, okay, if you're the FCC, like not while I'm guarding this joker. All right, number 16.
Last one
of the top 10 takeaways.
16.
All right, pick where you want to have your fight. Pick, and this goes back to where you have authority at. Pick where you want to have your fight, put your feet down there and engage.
Plant your feet.
40 years, 50 years, that's where you're going to place your fight at and get engaged and don't stop because it's going to take a 20 to 40 year way of battling to get out of this thing. All right. We made it. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics. Oh, I didn't think we were going to make it. Thank you, Pastor.
Toby's not going to make it.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like,
rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
by my political beliefs.
I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up, I want to be offended
by my coworkers
and walk around the office
on eggshells
and have my words policed
by HR. Words like
grandfather,
peanut gallery,
long time no see,
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
and do workplace sensitivity training
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist. I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.